I can't say to the competition, hey, I just got started and it's not fair that you're so much better than me. So can you just quit practicing for a bit while I catch up? Thank you. You can't do that. So what can you do to level the field? Have you ever stepped into an environment and been completely overwhelmed by how far behind you are compared to the others around you? Maybe you started a new job or an entrepreneurial endeavor, you started a business, and you see people who are having way more success, they have way more skill, way more experience than you do. Or maybe you signed up to play a sport and you went to practice and everyone is light years ahead of you because they've been practicing the sport for years and you're just getting started. I found myself in one of these situations 9 years ago when I became the head wrestling coach at Granger High School in West Valley City, Utah. I will forever love that school and the students who went there. Granger was the worst wrestling team in the state of Utah when I took over. The year before I took over, they forfeited nearly half of the weight classes. In wrestling, you have 14 weight classes. If you forfeit 7 weights, it means you only have half a team. It would be like a football team sending 6 guys out onto the field to compete with the 11 guys on the other team. It's impossible, but that's what I was up against. It had been nearly 10 years since the team had an all-state wrestler. It had been more than 16 years since they had a state champion. And I was competing against teams whose kids had wrestled since they were 4 years old. Their parents took them to summer camps, national tournaments, and year-round practices. They were lifelong wrestlers. They had wrestled hundreds, some even thousands of matches. My most experienced wrestler had wrestled 2 seasons for a total of maybe 25 matches. I remember standing in a crowded gym at our first wrestling tournament. I was feeling completely overwhelmed. How on earth was I to compete? There's no way. I couldn't make up for all of the hours my kids had missed compared to the other competition. This was frustrating, it was depressing, it was outright overwhelming. Now, chances are you've also been there. How do you compete in a competitive profession where you have smarter and more experienced people all around you? I'm a door-to-door sales professional by trade. It is an insanely competitive field. It's actually nearly impossible to succeed without lots of experience. And to gain the necessary skill level to succeed, it requires much more time than most are willing to put in. So what do we do? How do we level the playing field? What can we do? We can't go back in time. We can't start earlier. We can't stop others from progressing. I can't say to the competition, hey, I just got started and it's not fair that you're so much better than me. So can you just quit practicing for a bit while I catch up? Thank you. You can't do that. So what can you do to level the field? When I was at Granger, I asked myself, okay, I can't compete. So rather than focusing on winning or even competing, why don't I focus on becoming competent and go from there? So I asked this question, what is the fastest way I can take this room full of completely new and incompetent wrestlers and get them to competency? Once they are competent, they will enjoy wrestling. Once they're competent, the sport becomes fun. Once they know what they're doing, we can try to compete and maybe, just maybe, we might win some matches. I began to remember and realize that in any sport I'd ever learned how to play, there were just a couple of activities, a couple things we did frequently to develop that skill. So I started focusing my training around those things. That entire first season at Granger High School, we focused on those things. I designed every single practice around just a handful of activities, and guess what happened? We lost nearly every single match. Our only wins were to teams that had slightly less experience and even fewer wrestlers than we had. But guess what happened? We went from forfeiting 6 or 7 weights to only forfeiting 2. So now instead of playing an entire 11-man football team with 6 kids, we were playing with 9. We lost every single region match, but we didn't lose as badly. In fact, we lost 3 matches by less than 6 points. In wrestling, that's 1 match. 1 match goes our way that went their way, and we win that match. We also sent 3 kids to the state championships that year. We were now competent. We could build on that. We could grow. Kids were excited. We could start to compete. We had began to level the playing field by applying these simple learning activities. It wasn't long before I realized that I could actually use these same learning activities, that I used to coach wrestling to quickly acquire any skill I wanted to. You can also use these to master a skill if you already have a skill and want to improve upon it. Now I'm going to teach you this method now. I call it the wrestling method of learning because that's where I first intentionally applied it. But it's really a sports method of learning. It's the way that athletes learn their craft all over the world. So here's the wrestling method for learning to do anything. There are only 4 activities you need to do to level the playing field. So here are the 4 activities: technique, drilling, go live, and watch film. That's it. You can learn to do anything you want if you'll spend enough time doing those 4 learning activities. Here's what this looks like in wrestling. Technique is where we teach you how to do a skill. This is the mechanics of how you do a takedown or an escape or how you pin somebody. But just because you've been shown something, just because you've watched the video on how to do it, and maybe even understand it well enough to explain the concept, it doesn't mean you can actually do it. So you need to learn enough technique to be able to drill that same technique or skill. That brings us to the second activity, which is drilling. This is where you practice the skill over and over and over again in a controlled environment. In wrestling, we will practice our stance, our takedowns, thousands and thousands of times. That's how you create the necessary muscle memory to be able to do a skill in a live or a real world situation. Most people don't want to do this, and if they do it at all, they don't do it enough. This is where most of your practice time should actually be spent. You need to drill it at least until you are competent at doing it correctly in a controlled environment. But just because you can do something in a controlled environment when you're drilling, it doesn't mean you can do it in a live match or a real world situation. That's why you have to also go live. That's the third activity. Going live is when you wrestle live, full out in practice or in a live competition. This is what most people love to do the most. It is the funnest part of the learning process. If I want to learn basketball, it's more fun to just go play a pickup game than it is to drill a skill over and over again. The problem is that if you have a bad habit or you don't do it quite correctly and all you ever do is go live, then you're only furthering ingraining that bad habit into your muscle memory. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So you have to constantly bounce back and forth between learning the technique and drilling it in a controlled environment. If I want to learn to play basketball, it's more fun to just go play pickup games than it is to drill a skill over and over again. The problem is that if you have a bad habit or you don't do a skill correctly and all you ever do is go live, then you're only going to further ingrain that bad habit into your muscle memory. So practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So you have to constantly bounce back and forth between learning the technique, drilling the skill in a controlled environment, and watching your own film and then going live again. That brings us to the fourth learning activity, which is watching film. Watching film is probably the most underutilized learning activity. In wrestling, if you watch and rewatch all of your matches with an extremely critical eye, you will learn exponentially more quickly. Plus, then you will know what you need to work on when you go back to drilling. So this is the learning cycle. This is the wrestling method. You first learn the technique by having it taught to you or explained to you. You may learn technique from a book, a video, or a coach, but you have to learn enough of the technique to then go drill the skill. Then you drill the technique over and over again. Then you go live. You go use that skill in a real competition or in a real world situation. And last, you watch your own film. You see how you did. You ask, what can I improve on? Then go back through the cycle again and do this over and over again to learn any skill or any set of sub-skills that you want to learn. That is the wrestling method of learning any skill. That is how you level the playing field. So how well did this work for us and our team at Granger High School? Well, the next year we won the state championship. No, I wish. We did, however, win a region title the next 2 years. I stayed there for 5 years, and we had 3 all-state wrestlers, and the coach who took over after me has done an amazing job. He won 2 more region titles and crowned Granger's first state champion in 25 years this year. So now go out and apply this to whatever skill you want to learn. I apply this every day to learning and teaching sales skills. I use this to help my kids learn math, reading, and writing. I'm now starting to use it to perfect my Spanish. It's as simple as deciding what do you want to learn, then go learn the technique, drill it, Do it live in real world situations, record yourself doing it, and watch that film. That's it. That's all it takes to learn to do anything. So how long do you need to do that to learn a new skill? Well, Malcolm Gladwell, author of Outliers, says it's 10,000 hours to master a skill. Josh Kaufman of The First 20 Hours says you only need 20 hours to become reasonably good at a skill. What's the truth? Who the heck knows? Everybody is different. Everyone comes with different learning capabilities, experience, and different God-given abilities. So there's no magic number to learning. But I will tell you this. If you want to become reasonably good at a skill and you want to learn that technique quickly, then learn the technique of the skill. Drill that skill until you can do it reasonably well in a controlled environment. Then do the skill live in real world situations a bunch of times. In sales, we do it 600 times. Then watch your performance. Self-critique. Ask people who know more than you do to watch your videos and critique your performance. Do this and you will become reasonably good at whatever skill you choose. If you want to master a skill, you must drill it over and over and over again until you can't get it wrong. Then you have to do it live until you can't get it wrong in a live or real situation. That's how you master the skill. I'm Kurt Klapier with Teach Mom How, and this is how you can learn to do anything. Hey, thank you so much for watching my video. If you'd like to learn a new skill right now, click and watch my videos on how to run even when you're overweight and out of shape. Or click and watch my videos on how to edit videos and make professional slideshows even if you don't have a clue what you're doing and you don't have any fancy equipment. All right? Take a look, learn a new skill, and go out and remember you can learn anything.